Hello and welcome to Books I Read in 2023. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Books I read in 2023. That's last time I did this was 8 years ago. In 2015, at the time, I intended it to be an annual thing, but you know how it is. A few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I found that I was reading less books, or indeed fewer books, and I felt I had to somehow fool myself into reading more. So what I did was I instituted a regimen. I said at 8 p.m. every night, switch off the computer, switch off all the stuff, and read a book. And at 10 p.m., go to bed, go to sleep. And I did that, and I burnt through lots of books, and it was great. It was a good idea, because otherwise I'd be flicking through YouTubes and Instagram Reels and so on all night, and who wants to do that? I do appreciate the irony of saying that on a YouTube video. So here's some books I read in 2023 and what I thought about them, and I have no idea why anyone would care about this, but here we go. Let's have a look. This one was actually on my Leaving Cert course, and I never got around to reading it before. This is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And this is a very curious book. It's about this African, what does that mean? Nigerian rural strongman, and he's in charge of he's literally a strongman, a wrestler, and he's in charge of this tribe, and a load of stuff happens, and then the European Christians come in, and they start changing everything around, and he does not like that, and he responds poorly to it. And what I like about this is there's really no reason to sympathize with the hero, with the tribal chief, because he's not a nice person. He's vicious and brutal, and he beats women and he beats children, and I kind of like that. There's a kind of an honesty to it, a rawness to it that I like. It's a bit of a rough read, but I like reading things where you get an idea of how different people do things, and because we all have the same problems. As humans, we have the same problems. We have social problems and physical problems and so on, and they tend to be much the same, and it's interesting to see how different people solve the same problems. This is a book called Stormfront, which I'm led to believe is the first in a series by Jim Butcher, called The Dresden Files, and this is a guy called Harry Dresden. Now, this is essentially pulp fiction, right? It's a noir detective, Philip Marlowe, Dashiell Hammett type thing, right? But he's a supernatural guy, so he deals with like vampires and pixies and this kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun, but it's played completely straight. Like, it's played like a hard-boiled detective novel. There's no real concession to the fact that it's dealing with utterly ridiculous supernatural things. It's all just played completely straight, which works as long as you stick to the bit. And this guy Jim Butcher sticks to the bit, so it works. If you like noir stuff and you don't mind crazy shit creeping into your books, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I actually read this whole thing in about 3 days. I like Da Vinci coded it. I just kept reading it. It's great. What have we got here? This is a book I was meaning to read for a long time. It's Gormenghast by Mervyn Peake, and I did not get this at all. I'll give any book 100 pages, but I actually read the whole thing because I kept expecting some revelation to cake in, and it didn't. And I think, although I can't be sure, I think it's supposed to be a satire of... See, I got it cheap. I think it's supposed to be a satire of British public schools, meaning private boarding schools. But I have no experience of that, so I don't relate to any of the premise. It's a brave move, I guess, to set the thing maybe centuries after all the interesting stuff happened. Clearly something very interesting happened in the world of this book a long time ago, and they don't really talk much about it because the whole city is crumbling and falling apart, and that kind of thing is cool. I like that. But the rest of it is just... I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. It would not be the first time that Barry missed something. What have we got? Mountain of the Sea by Ray Naylor. Very good. Liked it a lot. About the dawn of consciousness in octopuses. More than one octopus is octopuses. And it's about the dawn of consciousness in these delightful animals. And it's based on the research and the science and so on. Very interesting stuff. A little bit scary, as I think any fictional scenario where any species suddenly develops consciousness, it's scary because all you can think of is, well, maybe we shouldn't have been eating these things for the past 5,000 years. They won't like that if they suddenly wake up, regardless of what the species is. And octopuses in particular, because apparently they're very intelligent. Good book though. Fun read. Next we have this. There is a whole subclass of books about classical history written in a very informal style, and this is one of them. And it works. I mean, if you're going to write in an informal style, like Mark Forsyth probably is the leader of this gang, you better be good at it, because if you write in an informal style and you're kind of slapdash and you don't know what you're talking about and you don't have mastery over your theme, it's just going to seem lazy. What Emma Southon here is not that. It's very good. It's a lot of fun. And a fatal thing happened on the way to the Forum. Murder in ancient Rome. Assassination. If you're a Roman Empire, assassination is essentially natural causes, death by natural causes. But it goes into details of a lot of different murders, of a lot of different kinds of people at different levels of society. And the murders are really used as a scaffolding to talk about the values of the Roman Empire. Also, again, in an informal, jokey way. I mean, I can't criticize it because I do on the podcast I do with Seamus. We do have a podcast called The Jib, where we talk about very serious things like CIA, international interventions, and FBI fuck-ups. But we try to be kind of smart-ass about it, you know? And I'm hoping that we demonstrate we have enough knowledge of the terrain to justify that tone. Well, this person, Emma, definitely has enough knowledge of the terrain to justify the tone, and it works and it's good. I mean, I think if you're interested in murder, it works. And if you're interested in the Roman Empire, because it discusses all those things, it also works. So it works in two different ways. This is a book I read before, but I read it again. So this is called The Quiet American, Graham Greene. Graham Greene had a wonderful habit of working in places and developing contacts and writing as a journalist in places which, once he left, became very, very interesting. And this is a book he wrote based on his experience in Vietnam in the 1950s, which is slightly before it became very, very interesting. And this is about The Quiet American, about a guy who's clearly, right from the start, a CIA agent, and is claiming not to be throughout the book. I'm just a guy, or I'm bringing medical supplies to the, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Quiet American. They made a movie about it with Brendan Fraser. And the movie is good. The movie sticks very closely to the book. Michael Caine is in it as well, I think, from what I remember. It's a good movie, and this is a good book. See the size of it. You'll have it read in a day. Brilliant. And it tells you a lot about what was going on in Vietnam. Like, this was published... This was published in 1955, right? So it was published. It's not like he waited for the Vietnam War and then wrote this and said, oh, this will be interesting now. He wrote it before all that, right after the Geneva Conference. He wrote this, probably during the Geneva Conference, because he wouldn't have published it the day he wrote the book, would he? Anyway, next. William Golding, more famous for a book he wrote called The Lord of the Flies. This is called Aspire. And it's the cover. It tells you everything you need to know. Look, there's some guys building a spire, right? It's about this monk in a medieval monastery who's decided to build a spire onto the cathedral against the advice of all the local building people and against the advice of all the priests and against the advice of whatever they have instead of architects back then. But he has this mission from God. He's going to build a spire on this thing and nothing else matters. And he's devoted his entire sense of identity to this spire. In that way, it's kind of like a Werner Herzog movie where he's following this guy around on what's definitely a foolish mission, but he's devoted his life to it, and you can see it's not going to work out. But he kind of knows himself, but he's doing it anyway, because what else can you do? It's sunk cost fallacy. If you've spent so much of your time and energy on this thing, and halfway through you figure out this thing isn't really working, well, it's very difficult for the human animal to roll back and say, oh, I made a big mistake. I've wasted the last 2 years of my life and all my money. It's very difficult. And it's much easier to say, well, no, this will turn around. If I could just push it a little further, this will turn around and everything will be fine. Which I think explains a lot of Trump support. This is another book I read in this year. It's called The Sword Defiant by Gareth Hanrahan, who, full disclosure, is known to me personally. But nevertheless, this book is very good. And again, there's a bravery that it shares with Gormenghast, and the bravery is in setting the events of the book long after what clearly must have been a very interesting time to write about. Now it's all over. There was some war years ago, and this guy has a sword, and the sword is like his pet sword or whatever, but the sword is just not nice. The sword talks to him. It's a fantasy book. The sword talks to him, and the sword is a dick. The sword is constantly haranguing this guy. It's almost like a metaphor for mental illness or PTSD or depression or something like that, which I've never had any of those things, but I'm led to understand that if you have something like depression, it can appear to be like a voice in your head just fucking with you. Like some people get a kind of depression, and it's like in having a voice in their head saying, oh, you're no good. What will this person think of you? What happens if you can't do this, you can't do that, you're useless, and so on, right? This sword is constantly talking to this guy, not telling him he's useless, but he's constantly trolling him and saying, you know what would be great would be if he just slashed everybody you can see right now with the sword, because you know this sword's amazing and it'll just slice right through him. And you're a warrior. What else are you doing with your time? Wandering around, not killing people, right? So it's that kind of a thing. And it's fun, and it's brilliant, and it's funny, and it's an example of a book done properly, where the characters are all respected and they're all developed and the plot makes sense and it's well thought out. Like Gareth's the first book I read of Gareth's is called The Gutter Prayer, and that is the same thing. It's another fantasy book, The Gutter Prayer. But if you're thinking of like that you might like fantasy books, but you don't know where to start, and you don't really want to get into the Game of Thrones thing, or you don't want to read like a whole cycle of things, start with The Gutter Prayer. It's brilliant, even if you know nothing about fantasy or anything. It explains itself on every page, and it's fun and it's interesting, and this is the same. It's fun and it's interesting and it's well written, and it's just well worth your time. I'm available, by the way, if anyone wants me to write a blurb for their book. Okay? But the only problem is I will be honest about what I think. I'm not going to like Paul Ross it and say this is fantastic. That's enough, I think. That's 2, 4, 6, 8 books. And that is not all the books I read in 2023. But I don't like making long videos. If I'm watching a YouTube, I kind of lose focus after about 20 minutes. So I think it might be not just hypocritical, but almost an act of cruelty to make a longer one than one that I would watch myself for that length of time. So I'm going to shut this down now. And if both of our lives, both mine and you watching this, if both of our lives go very badly wrong in 2024, you will see another one of these exactly 1 year from now. It's been a while since I did one of these solo things. I've been chopping up bits, and I've been doing the jib as well. The jib is scripted, so it takes a while to put together the episodes. None of this was scripted. I just grabbed a stack of books that I read, and I said, I'll extempore it like some sort of public speaking professional, which I am not. That's it. Thank you. My next video will, of course, be whenever I feel like making it. If you like this, tell your friends. And if you hate this video and you're thinking, why would this guy think any of us could care about his opinions on anything? and it annoys you, if you find this YouTube annoying, please tell everybody you know. Complain about it everywhere. It'll be good for me. I believe it's traditional to sign off by asking people to like and subscribe, but that's just way too banal, so I'm not going to do that. You don't have to like and subscribe. Do whatever you want. Live your life. And I hope that whoever you are and whatever you're doing, that you have a good 2024. All right.